the United States officially claims to possess more than 8,100 tons of gold, more than any other nation in the world. But here is the strange part. No one outside the government has seen these bars in over 70 years. Hidden in the depths of Fort Knox and in some secret vaults in New York, this treasure is still valued at only $42 per ounce, the same price set in the 1970s. So, why has it not been audited again? And if it has disappeared, what will happen? We will cover all of this in this video. During the Great Depression, the United States was on the brink of financial collapse. Banks failed, public confidence vanished, and the dollar swiftly lost value. It was in this context that in 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt made a decision that would change the course of modern money. He prohibited American citizens from possessing gold. Through Executive Order 6102, the government required each person to hand over their coins, bars, and gold certificates in exchange for paper dollars. The promise was one of stability. However, in practice, it represented one of the largest transfers of wealth in history, from the people to the state. With the gold collected, the government needed a place to store it. Thus, in 1936, the most famous vault on the planet was born, Fort Knox in the state of Kentucky. There, tons of gold were stored under maximum military security. Within a few years, American reserves grew even further. During the Second World War, dozens of European countries, fearing invasions and looting, sent their own reserves to the United States. It was the only location deemed truly safe at that time. In 1941, the American treasury reached its peak. The United States controlled approximately 23% of all the gold that existed in the world. This absolute power transformed the dollar into something more than a national currency. Under the Bretton Woods system, established in 1944, each dollar came to represent a fraction of real gold, and all other currencies were pegged to it. This movement transformed American gold into a kind of global guarantee. Each dollar issued was backed by physical gold, something no other country could sustain. It is precisely the opposite of what we have today, a system based on trust and indebtedness. But what began as a symbol of stability would soon become a grand accounting illusion. In the 1950s, the American economy was at its peak. Factories produced non-stop, consumption exploded, and the coffers of Fort Knox still gleamed. However, behind this facade of prosperity, something began to crack. The gold, which sustained the foundation of the system, started to slowly leave the country. The reason was simple. The United States was spending more than it produced. They were financing wars, reconstructions, and projects abroad, sending dollars to every corner of the planet. According to the Bretton Woods rules, any country could exchange these dollars for physical gold. France was the first to act. In the mid-1960s, President Charles de Gaulle ordered the Bank of France to convert its dollars into gold bars, demanding the dispatch of warships to transport the metal back to Europe. Germany and the United Kingdom followed suit. Within a few years, thousands of tons of gold left American coffers. The ultimate symbol of American strength began to dissolve in the face of the very law they had created. In August 1971, President Richard Nixon made a historic decision. Without prior notice, he announced the end of the dollar's convertibility into gold. The dollar ceased to be a note that represented gold and became a note that represented nothing but confidence in the American government. Nixon's decision was, in economic terms, a graceful default. The United States had promised gold but delivered paper. Since then, the dollar has become a debt with no expiration date, and the entire world became dependent on this model. The global financial system traded physical backing for faith. The system changed, but the gold remained there. Or did it not? Since the end of the gold standard, Fort Knox has become more than just a vault. It has turned into a symbol of power, but also of suspicion. The building, surrounded by electric fences and armed guards, theoretically houses almost half of all the gold in the United States. However, no one outside of the government has seen the complete interior of these chambers for over 7 decades. The mystery begins right there. The last complete audit took place in 1953, when Dwight Eisenhower was still president. Since then, public trust has been replaced by a long list of promises. In 1974, In response to rumors that the gold had disappeared, the government decided to partially open Fort Knox to journalists and 100 members of Congress. Cameras captured officials holding gleaming bars, a carefully staged performance. But no bar was weighed, no serial numbers were checked. It was a symbolic demonstration, not a real inspection in the way. Following years between 1975 and 1981, the Treasury organized partial audits. About 21% of the bars were verified, and the results were presented as satisfactory. However, the public never had detailed access to the reports, and after that, silence. No independent oversight, no complete audit published. The official justification: national security concerns. In 2012, Congress received a report from the Treasury Inspector General stating that there are no digitized records of the bars. All controls are performed manually, with paper documents and typewritten reports. In other words, the country with the most advanced technology in the world still checks its gold reserves as if it were 1950. In 2017, then Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin made a lightning visit to Fort Knox, the first by a secretary in nearly 70 years. After the visit, he tweeted only, "I am happy to confirm that the gold is there. No photos, no report, no numbers. But what could justify such secrecy around something that is supposedly intact?" When interest rates rise excessively, the cost of public debt explodes. This is where the theories about the so-called disappeared gold of the United States come into play, reflecting a blend of distrust, historical gaps, and official silence. None of these theories have been proven, but they all stem from real facts. The first theory suggests that much of the gold from Fort Knox was secretly sent to London during the 1960s. At the time, the American government needed to sustain the value of the dollar and intervened in international markets to control the price of gold. The hypothesis posits that tons were either loaned or sold to European central banks to keep the system alive. Unofficial documents indicate partial movements of bars without public records. Another hypothesis claims that the gold stored in Fort Knox may no longer belong to the United States. During World War II and the Cold War, various European countries stored their reserves in American vaults. The problem is that there has never been complete transparency regarding what was returned. Part of this gold may still be foreign, serving as informal collateral for political and financial agreements. A third, more recent theory discusses counterfeit bars, tungsten blocks coated in gold, visually identical and with similar weight. The rumor arose after an incident in 2009, when China allegedly received a shipment of adulterated bars from the United States. Although never proven, this case rekindled the question: what if part of the official reserves is also not what it seems? There are also those who argue that the gold was used in swaps and secret loans between central banks to manipulate prices. In 2013, the German Bundesbank requested the repatriation of 674 tons stored in New York, the United States took 7 years to return only half. And a detail that garnered much attention was that part of the return bars had been melted down and recast, reinforcing the suspicion that the metal is used in hidden transactions. Even if all these theories sound exaggerated, there is one undeniable fact: no one outside the government has seen this gold since the Cold War. And when the government avoids showing the evidence, the market begins to react. In recent years, the topic of American gold has forcefully returned to the center of financial discussions. This is not by chance. Images of planes transporting tons of bars between London and New York have piqued the curiosity of investors worldwide. In the midst of the digital era, where trillion-dollar transactions occur with a click, why would banks still need to physically move gold from one continent to another? The fact is that giants like JP Morgan and HSBC have been transferring enormous quantities of the metal. The technical explanation is what the market calls arbitrage, a price difference between the financial centers of London and New York. When gold is more expensive in the United States, banks transport the metal to sell it there and profit from the difference. It is a legitimate maneuver, but the public sees something else. Many interpreted this movement as a sign that something is wrong. After all, if American gold is secure in Fort Knox, why would banks need to seek bars in London? Why has this flow increased precisely during periods of global uncertainty, with rising inflation and record indebtedness? the distrust has gained traction. Figures like Elon Musk and American senators have called for public audits of Fort Knox, even suggesting live broadcasts to prove that the gold still exists. No requests have been granted. The treasury remains silent, maintaining a number that seems to come from another era. In official accounts, each ounce of gold is still valued at $42.22, the same price as in 1973. If this value were updated to the current rate, approximately $3,400 per ounce, the Treasury's balance would increase by nearly $970 billion. This would reduce around 3% of the American public debt with a simple accounting adjustment. The government's avoidance of this revaluation reveals something important. There may be much more at stake than mere numbers, and this accounting discrepancy raises a much larger question. What if the gold is no longer there? The mystery surrounding American gold is more than just a historical curiosity. It serves as a practical reminder of how money works and what truly gives it value. The modern financial system is not supported by metal but by trust, and trust is a volatile asset. When it disappears, the entire economic structure shakes. For the prudent investor, this story is less about conspiracy and more about preparation. The first lesson is simple yet profound. Distrust, trust. This does not mean living in fear, but rather understanding that government promises and bank guarantees have an expiry date. Printed money is a promise of payment, not a value in itself. This is why every investor should keep a portion of their wealth in something tangible: physical gold, silver, or even real assets such as land and property. The second lesson is diversification in real assets. In times of low interest rates and inflated currencies, those who concentrate everything in paper are exposed. Gold, for example, does not depend on who issues it, does not break, and does not require a bailout. It simply exists, and that is already a form of security. The third lesson is to understand the concept of unbacked contract. When you have a note or an investment, what you possess is a promise. When you have gold, you have ownership. This difference is the line that separates dependence from autonomy. The fourth lesson is practical: the 10-10-80 rule. Allocate 10% of your capital to precious metals, 10% to immediate liquidity, and 80% to income-generating assets, such as shares in solid companies. This proportion protects, preserves, and still allows your wealth to grow in a balanced manner. And finally, learn from history. No fiat currency has survived more than 70 years without losing purchasing power. The dollar, since 1971, has been operating unbacked for 54 years. The clock is ticking. According to Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, gold is the only asset that is not someone else's debt. What do you think is inside Fort Knox? Real gold or old promises? Like this video and subscribe to the channel to keep understanding what is behind the numbers and to protect your assets. And for another important alert, this time from the other side of the world, watch this video that is appearing on the screen. See you there.